Stomp your feet and clap your hands with me. It's a celebration. Yeah, stomp, stomp, clap, clap, stomp, stomp, clap. You got it. Tech 9, let's go.
KC-Mo, roll.
I'm representing
KC-Mo, roll.
Yeah.
What is up, Dynasty Degenerates? This is your host, Nick Anderson, with the inaugural episode of the Down and Dirty Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast, or as we like to call it around here, the Triple DFFP. This is going to be your Sunday six-pack. We're going to go over 2019 Rookie Redraft. So what I'm going to be showing you guys today is my Dynasty League, which is a salary league. So basically, we don't get to keep these players forever, like a lot of traditional Dynasty leagues do. We give them rookie contracts, rookie salaries, and once that expires, they go back into free agency. We have to bid for them. So I'm going to be showing you my Dynasty League's 2019 actual rookie draft board. And we're going to be going over that today, and then readdress what we would do differently, knowing what we know now, with all the information on the rookies from 2019. So we're going to go over here. I'm going to show you guys our 2019 original draft board. If you don't mind, I'm going to be drinking some Busch Light along with you guys. So let's start off right here. We got Josh Jacobs at 1-1. A lot of the analysts... all the analysts said that he was the consensus number one. We got Miles Sanders at 1-2, N'Keal Harry at 1-3, DK at 1-4, Hawk at 1-5, Montgomery at 1-6, and so on and so forth. What I've done for you guys here is I've highlighted who I think are the biggest values of this draft and people that deserve a little bit more talking about. At 2-5, we've got Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel, as we saw from the Super Bowl, is a highly versatile player. The 49ers aren't accepting just relegating him to the passing game. They're using him in fakes, they're using him in reverses, they're running the ball with him. So he's going to be getting out there, and he's not just going to be scoring points off of catches. He's going to get you rushing yards as well. So, I mean, if we look at his numbers from 2019, Deebo Samuel had a 50% contested catch rate, which is great amongst his peers. Along with that, Deebo also had a 7.9-yard target distance. But the great things about him is that he had 1.84 yards of target separation and 8.1 yards after carry, which means that not only was he catching the balls that came to him, not only was he making space before that receiver, before the ball got to him, but he was also not going down on first contact after he caught that ball. The target separation and yards after carry were second amongst his peers in this draft class. So I think Deebo is going to pay dividends moving forward because that 49ers offense, even though they couldn't handle the Chiefs, is going to do nothing but get better moving forward. So then we've got a 3-6 Alexander Madison. Now, Madison isn't one of those guys that I'm in love with. I think that he is a Jordan Howard prototype, but the situation that he's in is what dictates his draft price right here. He is behind Dalvin Cook, who we all know is injury prone, and he's in a Vikings run-first offense. So, do I think that he's better than some of the players that I put behind him? No, but moving forward, you'll see that. But I do think that he's one of those guys that could win you a league if Dalvin Cook goes down in the next year or two. Then we look at 310, we've got Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin, man, 310, that's a crazy value for him. I don't think we knew. We're looking at a 68.4 contested catch rate for Terry McLaurin, which means that he had the stickiest hands of everybody in this rookie class. He had 919 receiving yards. He had a target distance of 13.9 yards and a target separation of 1.51 yards. So he was separating, he was catching, and every ball that came his way, he came down with. Now, I think the thing that we need to focus on with Terry McLaurin is how a guy like this fell down to 3-2. Because he's obviously one of the best wide receivers in this draft class because he did it in a depleted Redskins offense with Dwayne Haskins. And so, I mean, how did we miss a guy like this? But a rule that I want to focus on moving forward is not neglecting the second guy in a college offense. Because the same thing that we did with A.J. Brown with DK Metcalf in front of him, we did with Terry McLaurin with Paris Campbell in front of him. So we focused on the shine and the glitz and the glamour of the number one in those college offenses. We realized that those things aren't always as dynamic as they need to be. And so we forget about those number twos, the A.J. Browns and the Terry McLaurins, and look who's the one that showed up this year. So I think that we need to pay attention. I know Terry McLaurin didn't have the greatest stat line coming out. He had a really, really limited sample size coming out of Ohio State. But with his combine scores and the stuff that he did show on tape, we should have recognized this. So let's go back to it. At 4-1, we've got Devin Singletary. Now, Devin Singletary is one of those guys that I'm coming around on hard. It's a lot of people have been talking to me about him. I've been hearing his name come up a lot here lately, and it's just something that I think I need to come to terms with, is that this dude's actually a baller. Now, we're going to see later on in the 2019 rookie redraft that I've still got him behind David Montgomery, but I'm not sure if that should be the case. I'm starting to kind of convince myself otherwise, even though it's already pinned to paper right now. Because Devin Singletary had 151 carries to David Montgomery's 242 carries, but he only had 90 fewer rushing yards than David Montgomery had on the season. So you're telling me that he had 90 fewer carries and 90 fewer yards? That's absurd. I think it's actually more like 100 or 110 fewer rushing yards, but still, that's absurd. And then he has 4 total touchdowns as opposed to 7 from David Montgomery. But that's going to change, man. He's starting to become the focal point of this offense, where David Montgomery was the bell cow all year, and Devin Singletary was sharing carries. And he was also making yards after the run. So his yards created per carry were 1.76 to David Montgomery's 1.19, even though they were seeing the exact same numbers stacked in the box, 6.5% or 6.5 people stacked in the box every time. And so we're showing that Devin Singletary's got a little bit more wiggle than David Montgomery does. He was doing more with his carries, and he was more efficient. So those are things to pay attention to moving forward. So what I'm going to transition into right now that we've seen the 2019 original draft board, this is exactly how we drafted it out. I got Debo at 2.5, so I'm pretty happy about that. But let's go look at the 2019 rookie redraft with all the information that we know now, what it's going to be like. And ta-da! So at number 1-1, we've got Josh Jacobs. At 1-2, we got Miles Sanders. That's the first debate that I've got. That's the first thing that's kind of weighing on me about this one, is because Josh Jacobs at 1-1 and Miles Sanders at 1-2 are so incredibly close to me. If we're looking at their numbers, Miles Sanders had 179 carries, 179 carries with 818 rushing yards, compared to Josh Jacobs' 242 carries and 1150 rushing yards. And so, I mean, the yards per carry are better for Josh Jacobs, but it's not monumentally better. And Miles Sanders was just starting to get into the swing of things, dealing with a couple injuries this season. So I think he's going to find his rhythm. Then we look at the targets that they had. Miles Sanders had 63 targets compared to Josh Jacobs' 28. And I don't see that going down. I see that going up, because he was, for half the season, he wasn't the starter. He was dealing with massive shares being given to Jordan Howard, and now this coming year, he's going to be the bell cow in that offense. So I see nothing but bright horizons for this kid. He ended up coming down with 50 of those 63 receptions, and he had 6 total touchdowns. So I think that there's a good chance with the dynamic Eagles offense compared to the floundering Oakland offense. If you're looking at the weapons that they have around him with a better quarterback in Philly versus Oakland, I mean, I see a scenario where Miles Sanders could be the one that usurps Josh Jacobs as the number 1 in this draft class. So looking back at it, we've got A.J. Brown at 1-3. I think everybody can agree he real good. We got Debo Samuel at 1-4. We already talked about him. DK at 1-5. Now, DK is one of those guys, man. I think that he impressed me. I know that there was a lot of hype around DK moving in, but I honestly thought that with the injury that he sustained in college and the way that he looked at the combine, I thought this dude was a combine athlete. He wasn't a football player. I thought he was going to be rigid, that he couldn't move. But, man, he seemed to be the perfect weapon to pair with Russell Wilson in that Seattle offense. Going down to 1-6, we got David Montgomery. Now, I just told you some pretty bleak stats for David Montgomery there. I still think that he should be up here. Now, I don't know if he should be over Devin Singletary here, but that's the way that I've got it right now. The people that I think that are more valuable than David Montgomery, Terry McLaurin and Mecole Hardman, we'll talk about them next. But the only reason why I have David Montgomery above those two is because running back is scarce in Dynasty Fantasy Football. You get 2 to 3 years out of these guys, and then they're gone. And especially with this influx of young guys right now, you need a young dude that solidified his spot in that role, which David Montgomery hasn't exactly done, but they're not going to draft another first round or another top end running back until they've made sure that they've gotten everything they can out of David Montgomery. So he's there at 1-6. That's where he's at, even though I think that Terry McLaurin and Mecole Hardman are going to be better long-term values for you. That's where he goes. At 1-7, we've got Terry McLaurin. I already talked to you about his stat line. And at 1-8, we got Mecole Hardman. Now, that was another debate that I had right there, was Terry or Mecole. Because Terry showed up this year, but so did Mecole, man. Terry McLaurin had, I think it was a 68% contested catch rate is what Terry McLaurin had. But Mecole Hardman, man, he had 2.02 target separation yards, which means that he was 2.02 yards away from the defender when that ball came into his hands. He's burning folks. And then his yards after catch, he was putting up just bonkers yards after catch numbers. What was it right there? Mecole Hardman had 10.8 yards after catch on average, which means that he ain't going down. That dude's elusive, he's got good hands, and he's fast as hell. So y'all better be watching out for him. And with the evacuation of Sammy Watkins that's probably coming in this offseason, all those targets are going to be going Mecole Hardman's way. And being passed to by Patrick Mahomes ain't nothing to shake a stick at either. So let's look back at this right here. We got Marquise Brown at 1-9. He had a great season. And I mean, being thrown to by Lamar Jackson is great. He opens up that offense. But Marquise Brown couldn't stay healthy, man. I'm hoping that he can get it together, but he had preseason and during season problems. At 110, we've got Devin Singletary, who I told you is a guy that I'm coming around on. I mean, he's one of those guys that, I'm telling you, I think might be vying for David Montgomery's spot here. At 2-1, we got Kyler Murray. And this is crazy for me because I'm not one of those guys in a non-2 QB league, non-superflex league that likes to draft these quarterbacks real high. But Kyler Murray, he showed up this year, and his numbers were looking vaguely reminiscent of Lamar Jackson's numbers in 2018. Let's take a look at that real quick. So Kyler Murray, in his freshman outing compared to Lamar Jackson, had 3,722 passing yards compared to Lamar Jackson's 1,201. He had 20 passing touchdowns compared to Lamar Jackson's 6, okay? Now, I understand that's a skewed number because Lamar Jackson was playing behind Joe Flacco for a lot of the season. But Kyler Murray was showing us a lot of stuff this season. His rushing yards, on 93 carries, he had 544 yards compared to Lamar Jackson's 147 carries for 697 yards. I'm telling you, this dude's got wheels on him. Now, he's probably not going to do the spin moves that Kyler Murray or that Lamar Jackson's doing out there, but he's impressive. And I think that if they can get him a tight end in this draft, or if he can start getting a rapport with Kenyon Drake, you get him another wide receiver to go with Christian Kirk, this dude's going to be a beast. If he can do anything like Lamar Jackson did this year, he's going to be a draft day value. And he's somebody that you should be trying to acquire in dynasty leagues right now. So let's go back over. We got at 2-2, N'Keal Harry, which I'm just not impressed with, man. Who's his quarterback going to be? Who's his coach going to be? I don't know. He didn't show us anything. He had opportunities to be able to catch the ball, and he just didn't do it. At 2-3, we've got Noah Fant, and 2-4, we got T.J. Hawkinson. So I know that this is going to be a little dicey for people because it's widely thought that T.J. Hawkinson is over Noah Fant on this. But you start looking at the numbers, and I just don't think that's the case. They're about the same age. Noah Fant is about 4 months younger than him, but he's got a 9-point lower dynasty ADP. He had more targets this year, with more receiving yards, with more touchdowns, with more receptions, more yards after carry, more yards after catch. He had a little bit fewer red zone targets, but he had about the same target distance. I mean, I'm just saying, Noah Fant on the up with Drew Lock in this Denver Broncos offense that can be dynamic with Phillip Lindsay in there. You know, they can spread it out a little bit. You got Royce Freeman running the ball up the middle. You got Phillip Lindsay stretching it out on the side. Cortland Sutton coming into his own, and Drew Lock trying to find his way into this offense. I think that he could be the value as opposed to T.J. Hawkinson getting it from Matthew Stafford having to compete with Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones. So I think that if we actually take a look at it, Noah Fant, who isn't widely seen as somebody that's going to be more valuable than T.J. Hawkinson, is the one that's going to surprise us all on this. Then we go down to Preston Williams and Darius Slayton. Now these two, Preston Williams and Darius Slayton, are the guys that I am saying need to be your trade targets right now. They got hurt. They had problems this year, but when they were on the field, they were impressive. They don't have the name value of the other players that we were talking about. They're not going to cost you the price that a Deebo Samuel is going to cost you, that a Terry McLaurin and Mecole Hardman is going to cost you. But these guys are going to pay out in the long run. I'm telling you that next year, once they come into their own, if they can stay healthy, they're going to be values. And you can get them right now for, I would say that you could get either of those guys for a 2.8. And that's something that I'd be willing to pay all day, every day for both of those players. So then we look here. We've got Alexander Madison at 2.7. Like I talked about earlier, he's a position-based player. It's not because of anything that he was doing out there on the field that was wowing me, but if Dalvin Cook goes down, this dude's a bell cow, and he's going to be making hay. 2.8, we got Irv Smith. Irv Smith, the one stat that I wanted to focus on with him, he did a lot of things good this year, but he didn't get that much action. He had 47 targets, 2 touchdowns. But he had an 80% contested catch rate on the year. He was catching everything that came his way, and he was looking agile out there on the field doing it. So I know that he's got to overcome Kyle Rudolph. I know he's got to overcome the run-first offense of the Vikings. But I think that if he can come into his own, this dude's going to be a beast because he was showing me something when I was watching his tape. At 2.9, we've got J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who honestly just doesn't impress me. I probably should have switched him and Paris Campbell because J.J. Arcega-Whiteside at least got the chance to compete this year. There were points this year where Alshon Jeffrey was down, where Nelson Aguilar was down, and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and I picked him up off waiver wires because I thought that he was going to step in and he was going to show up. I drafted him. He was my Mr. Irrelevant, my last pick in the draft because I thought that he had a chance. But every single time that he got the opportunity, he didn't do anything with it. And so I think that because it's such a thin wide receiver class, that's where he's at the 2.9, but he's not impressing me at all. And then we got 2.10 Paris Campbell. I'm hoping that they do something with their quarterback situation there because Jacoby Brissett isn't the answer, but they got a lot of weapons. They got a great line in Indianapolis, and so if they can make something happen over there, I think that Paris Campbell can show out because like I was talking about back at Ohio State, you got Paris Campbell versus A.J. Brown there. He was the one, Paris Campbell versus Terry McLaurin. He was the one who was looking best out there on the field. So I'd be excited to see what he could do if he gets a quarterback out there that can actually get him the ball and he can stay healthy all season. So that is our 2019 rookie redraft. I hope you liked it. If you didn't, really don't care. But I'd like to hear your input. We're working on this right now. This is the first episode, so I'm going to get better. My takes are going to get better. I'm going to try and provide you with the most in-depth information that I can. And I just want to hear some feedback from you guys. These walls aren't always going to be so bare. I'm not always going to trip over my words as much. I've been drinking a little bit, so take my word for it if you want to or don't, because I'm drunk.